The corporate backlash to Republican-led voter suppression bills in Georgia and Texas is causing a nasty breakup between the GOP and big business. So could this be the end of a long-standing relationship? That's the big question that Bloomberg Opinion's Connor Sen asks. And he joins me now from Atlanta. Connor, it's great to have you with us. The Republican Party for years has been aligned with U.S. corporations, but you recently wrote that last week felt like this watershed moment in the relationship between the two, which could turn into a central issue for Republicans campaigning in the midterms. So is the Republican Party breaking up with corporate America?
I think the establishment of the party, particularly in the Senate, is not ready to do that yet. But the question is, when you think about future elections, is that candidates, especially in open seats or running against Democrats, aren't bound by what's happened in the past. And so if you think about the type of emotion that's sort of resonating with the conservative base, it tends to be this more populist, anti-corporate, anti-China, cancel culture type of feeling. And so I think you're going to see 2022 candidates run against, these woke corporations, so to speak.
When the 2022 candidates run against these woke corporations, as you refer to them, does that put them in a position to actually win at the ballot box? Or does this type of thing not really resonate that much with the audience beyond Fox News and beyond Twitter?
Well, I think certainly in red states, they can probably get away with doing anything. I think it'll be interesting in Senate races in states like Arizona and Georgia that were so closely contested in 2020 to see whether there's enough, emotion to drive turnout to push those issues and those candidates over the top, or if you get a big backlash with sort of college educated and suburban voters who are, sort of aren't really moved by that kind of rhetoric.
What, in your opinion, does this mean for the companies that are speaking out right now? Companies like Delta, Coca-Cola, American Airlines, what Nike has said in the past and how Nike has positioned its own marketing, for example. What does it say about the way that they're thinking about their own client base, their own customer base?
Part of it, to your point, is about the customers, and particularly with a company like Nike or Coke, you've got a younger, more diverse customer base that maybe is more Democratic leaning. But it's also the employees are a big part of it too. And we've seen over the past few election cycles that college educated and suburban voters, the types of people who run these companies, both at the executive and middle management level, aren't really into the very Trumpy populist message of the Republican Party. And it's you've got to appease those people as well. And if they're the ones who are saying we're not okay with this, then management has to respond.
Yeah, one thing I think about too, and we've talked about it on Quick Take over the last week, is the employees that these companies want to attract. And it's something that Josh Green, our colleague at Bloomberg Business Week, writes about in a recent column, how these companies want to attract talent that has values that align less with the reactionary sort of Trump stuff that we've seen over the past few years.
Right. You might still have CEOs who are sort of, forged in the fires of the late 90s of corporations staying out of politics. But if you're trying to recruit, not just millennials, but now Gen Z in their, early 20s, those days are long past, and they're much more progressive on social issues and expect the brands and companies that they want to be attracted to speak out. And so I think it's a big challenge between, the political relationship we've talked about and then where these companies are trying to go in terms of talent and customers.
So politically, it gets a little more complicated when we talk about taxes, because in the past, the Republican Party certainly has been aligned with corporations and corporations vice versa for a few reasons. One of those is because of deregulation or regulations or lack thereof. And the other one is because of the way that the Republican Party has thought about taxes and incentives for these companies. So I wonder, when we are in the midst of a plan coming from the Biden administration for an infrastructure bill that's over $2 trillion and will be paid for, at least the Biden administration hopes so, with an increase in the corporate tax rate, where this leaves companies if they're really removing themselves or somewhat moving away from the Republican Party.
Yeah, I think they're being torn in a lot of different directions. And in terms of corporate taxes, we've seen Amazon come out and support this week, saying that they're okay with at least some rise in the corporate income tax. So we're not going to have unanimous feeling from corporations on what to do about corporate taxes when it comes to infrastructure. So if you sort of have a divided feeling among corporate America on higher taxes, and then sort of more of a unanimous feeling in terms of recruiting employees and customers, it's difficult because you're sort of being pulled in different directions, and different companies will be pulled in different directions. And so it's just kind of a mess relative to maybe what it was in the past.
Connor, you're in the thick of this in Atlanta right now. I mean, this is where the special election was. This is where Kelly Loeffler lost. It's where Brian Kemp and Georgia Republicans have pushed these stricter voting laws. It's where companies are based that are speaking out, like Delta and Coca-Cola. What does it feel like to you as a consumer?
I think it's sort of helter-skelter, and you sort of, things feel one way one day and then a different way the next day, where you have Democrats praising Georgia, after the state flips blue, and then the Senate seats go to Democrats. And you also have had companies like Microsoft say they're moving here, in part due to the Black talent base and Black entrepreneurs, Black higher education. And at the same time, you hear call for boycotts from national companies based on election laws passed by Republicans. And so it's really a strange environment where there's no consistent message or feeling, and everyone's kind of reacting day to day to what's going on.
Bloomberg's Connor Sen joining us live from Atlanta. Hey, Connor, always great to get you on the show. Thanks so much for taking the time this afternoon.
The biggest stories the moment they happen from around the globe. Subscribe to Bloomberg Quick Take now for insight in an instant.